Welcome, nutritionradio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, the University Nutrition Professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in. Fitness Fridays. Hey, everybody. Today we have Mike Nelson. Mike Nelson is a PhD in exercise physiology. He is a podcast host of multiple podcasts, including Iron Radio. He is part-time faculty. He is a serial entrepreneur, if you will. So he's the perfect person to ask a couple of questions about navigating fitness and social media, which is a topic that came up with Abby Stack just a couple of weeks ago, but also producing media. So you could get both consumer and, I guess, business owner tips and value out of what Dr. Nelson has to say. So this will be part one. Enjoy. Like, how does one navigate social media, because it seems like the people that are educated or respectable or legitimate or whatever you want to call it, they're just reclusive. Like, how many professors out there don't do anything beyond the classroom, right? That kind of thing. Yeah. So her question was, how do you do that? And so I thought we could ask you, because that's something that you managed to do. How do you walk that line between not being one of these, those cheesy, like, do this one thing every morning and you'll lose 50 pounds, this kind of, how do you avoid some of that stuff and still try to reach people? What would your advice be to people that are, trying to navigate the social media thing right now when they're, especially if they go to school and they're taught evidence-based practice is important, and what you see is a lot of gurus with opinions, frankly.
Oh yeah.
So what would your advice be to someone like that?
Got it. I would say my general advice would be, if you're purely an academic and almost all of your income is from academic stuff, the pro and the con is, the pro is you don't have to worry about making any money off of social media. You don't really have to worry about some of the metrics as much. I mean, obviously you want people to hear what you're doing. You want them to hear your message, but you're not dependent upon it for your income. So I think that gives you a lot more freedom. And I think because now a lot of the platforms are kind of pay to play, or if you want a fair amount of views, you kind of have to do some interesting thing. Again, I think that's probably changing for the better. When you're a full-time academic, you don't really have to do any of that stuff. So I think a lot of them just avoid it. I mean, if I was teaching full-time or doing something else that I had an income that didn't depend on media, newsletter, or anything like that, I don't know. I don't think I'd probably even be on social media, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I think at this point, it's almost, if you're trying to promote something, you have a business, it's kind of sort of a necessary evil. Obviously, there's people who are successful who don't do that. But when you go that direction, I think you kind of have to decide, what is sort of your line of how far you're going to push something versus try to stay closer to the evidence. Obviously, you can't make any. I know for certain that, I do have some supplements that I do recommend to my newsletter list on occasion. I am an affiliate for some of them, which I clearly disclose. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't make that much money from it. The only main reason I do it is, some income is nice. I like supporting some of the companies I think that are doing stuff a better way.
Yeah.
But I also realized that people on my newsletter list were buying just absolute garbage.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay, well, hopefully I can present them, something that's a little bit more legitimate. But I also know that if I made bigger claims and made it sound like, oh my God, this supplement changed my life, which I don't know, I wouldn't do, I probably would sell a lot more product. But
yeah,
again, that's not my number one goal. And I specifically design my business so that I'm not dependent upon affiliate sales for pretty much anything because of that potential reason.
Mm-hmm. So how do you make it attractive? Because you're competing against preposterous claims with almost no evidence. How do you walk that line?
So what I opted to do is I do most of my stuff through a newsletter, which people can sign up for. Go to MikeTNelson.com. And the reason I do that is, one, I can control all of that. So once people have opted in, if I wanted to, I could send them 7 emails a day, which I'm probably not going to do, but I could. Or I could email them once a week, once a month, whatever. I like communicating, mostly on a daily basis, but I can control whatever I want to do. If there's a new video I put out and it's on YouTube, I can send them to YouTube. I can send them to Twitter if I wanted, wherever. I can control what I do. And as long as I have those emails backed up, there's no real algorithm or anything else I have to worry about. I don't have to worry about super hypey claims. Obviously, I want people to open them and read them. Whereas if you're really big on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is, you're still kind of using a rented audience. We've been around long enough to see them change the algorithms on YouTube, change the algorithms on Facebook, even Instagram within the last year, because once the company is public, they realize it's kind of a pay to play. Even on Instagram, it's a weird thing that you have to have 10,000 followers in order to paradoxically send people off Instagram. So my biased opinion, Instagram has this weird thing where they want to keep you interested just enough to try to get you to that mythical, magical 10,000. But they don't want people to hit it real fast, because if everybody hits it real fast, in essence, they're sending people for free off their platform. So they want to encourage you to do, paid ads to get a greater reach. And, those things aren't bad. It's just once they're a public company, their incentive is to make money. So I like doing it mostly directly through a newsletter. It's a lot longer process. It is, potentially more work. But I think, at least in my business, it's dramatically reduced the volatility of it and being a little bit more insulated, and you're not as the hest to, whatever wacky, crazy thing is trending, right? So Instagram is really pushing people to Reels. They've expanded the time frame on a Reel now a little bit. In essence, you've got, 30, 60-ish seconds to convey a message. And if I'm trying to sell a freaking 28-hour certification, or explain a study, it's pretty hard to do that in a 30 to 60-second soundbite, So it's, for me and for what I'm doing, it's not necessarily, I would say, it's useful, but I like having the control and then sending people stuff that I think is useful. And as long as they respond positively, right, I can look at metrics, I can do surveys, etc. Look at sales, then I can manage what direction to go.
Mm-hmm. So would you recommend that people, when they're jumping on social media, because like you said, with the supplements, garbage supplements or bad advice, whatever they're doing, should they look for newsletters? Are newsletters across the board a safer bet, or are you unique in that space?
What I've noticed, which again, it's a generality, and there are people who definitely violate this. I've generally seen that people have a longer form content. They tend to be a little bit better. That may be longer form podcasts, that may be longer form videos, that might be longer form written content. I'm biased for people to generally look for newsletters. I find that the quality is a little bit higher. You can go down into Substack and all sorts of other areas now. That's not an absolute guarantee by any stretch of the imagination. But I think it also depends on the mindset of, are you just looking for entertainment, or do you have a problem you're trying to solve? Right? And most of the problems you're trying to solve are probably not going to be resolved with a 30 to 60 second clip. You might find something that's entertaining. Once in a while, you find a couple of tips that are useful, but it's generally going to be more longer form content. So again, I do that on purpose, because I don't think that someone who watches a 30-second clip of mine is going to be super interested in a multi-hour newsletter. I can get cool metrics and cool hits, but when I've tracked stuff, conversion is kind of hit or miss. The opposite argument to that would be, well, if you're doing those things over time, you feel like you have a closer proximity to those people, maybe they'll hop on the newsletter, maybe they'll do something else, maybe, but again, I think that's more of a long play, I would say. So I tell people, look for longer form content, look at the person's background and what are they really pushing? And then also, are they honest about disclosures, right? So, when I started doing affiliate stuff for supplements, even 2015, 16, the business coach I worked with was like, why are you telling them that's an affiliate link, you idiot? What are you doing? And back then it wasn't necessarily required that you had to disclose stuff. Now it's a requirement, although it's not really enforced. But to me, I was like, I just want to be honest with people that, I do make a few dollars from this, but here's why I like it. Here's how long I've used it. And then I only promote, like a handful of items. I think be wary of someone who's promoting the latest and greatest and new thing, like every day to every week, because there's just not that much impressive stuff out there.
The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.